Hello everyone and welcome to the Premiere Pro, where you'll learn everything you need to know to go from a 100% beginner to a professional level video editor. We'll release at least one new tutorial every week, and if there's anything you'd like to see covered in the future, let me know in the comments. In Volume 9, I showed you how to keyframe graphics with effects controls. If you want to take a look at that video, there's a link in the description. Right now, I'm going to show you how to export your video, which is the last step in your edit. Let's get started. So basically, whatever you name your timeline, your video here, is what's going to be the name of your video when you go to export, which will be right here. That's the file name. And you can just change that manually anytime. So what's cool about these newer versions of Premiere, you used to have to go to the menu and you used to have to go down to export, media. But now it's basically just a tab system. You can go right over and bounce between your edit. So this was our last sports video commercial that we did. And what you always want to do before you edit, you just want to give your video one last look just to make sure there's nothing you're going to want to change. Because once you export it, if you have a problem, you're going to have to do it all over again. So give it one last look. All right, so when you're really happy and satisfied with this video, that's when it's time to export. So the way it is in the project, we can watch it in the project, but this isn't a file that you can send to someone. This isn't anything that can be anywhere but in Premiere. So we need to make this a self-contained file that can be posted, that can be played. That is the last step to making our video. So we're gonna go over to our edit tab here, or our export tab, and actually, you know, this can be very overwhelming at first because there's so many different what's called video codecs and formats, but there's a reason for all of them. And the more you do this, believe me, you will get more comfortable and you'll start to understand what these things are. And they'll be part of your workflow from beginning to end, from recording any video footage to your timeline to exporting. So what we want to do is you always want to, for a final cut that's going to go to someone, you want to export something in high quality. You don't want to give a draft version, something that's a lower quality. You want something to look as good as it can. So I'm not going to go into every detail because I could spend 5 videos on this, and we'll probably make either a series in the future or a more detailed, longer video in the future. But I'm just going to show you the basics of how to get it out of your program. So what's great is, again, we can bounce back and forth. So the most important thing, you want to make sure you have the right video selected, right? Because if you export something different than what you're meaning to, there's no point. So we're going to look at that real quick. So you go back to your edit. If you look at the space, and in this version, it did darken this bar. It's hard to see, but this is a little, what's called the work area bar. And what you're doing is when you have this bar up, you're telling Premiere to only look at what's in here. And it's a good way to see, you know, kind of quickly take a snapshot of how long your edit is. Now, if I wanted to just export like the end here, right? I can grab this, drag it, and also when I render or when I hit enter, it's only going to play what's in there, right? So if I just said, if I was trying to get this approved, you know, by a producer or something like that, and they said, well, let me just see the end, I want to make sure it looks good, I can export just the end. So I don't have to export the entire video to get one piece of it approved. So, but we're going to do our entire video here because we're happy with it. Now that's one way to do it, is to have the work area bar. You may or may not have this. If you don't have it, you can go over here and go to work area bar and turn that on and off. Some people prefer to work without it. If you do not like to have the work area bar and you're saying, well, then how is it going to know what to export? It's really simple. You take your playhead, bring it to the beginning point, hit I for in, just like when we're trimming clips. You set an in point. You go to your last frame. You hit O for out, just like trimming clips, set an out point. And now that is going to be your section. And when you go over to export, it's going to say range. And they're saying, what do you want me to look at to export? Because there's a couple different options. We were on work area, but we got rid of that. So see how it says source in and out? That source in and out is what we just said here. So that's what that means. Now I'm going to clear that because, again, I prefer to work with the work area bar. I just feel like it's a better visual. But again, it's one of those things that's completely your preference. So now that I went back to work area, now it was smart enough to see that. But if it was still set on source in and out, you're going to want to make sure to hit work area. You can also hit entire source. And what that would mean, if you had a work area, but you had, like, say, if I just quickly copy, if you had more video over here just randomly and you have entire source selected, it's going to do all of that. And you have to be very careful, because if there's stuff back there you didn't want in your edit and you do that and show it to a client, they're going to see all this black and all this random stuff. So you have to make sure, first and foremost, you know what your settings are and make sure you're exporting what you mean to. So I'm just going to hit work area. And even though I now have a little, extra extraneous stuff here, it's not going to look at that. It's only going to look at this. So very important. So what sometimes you do is you might have alternate shots, B-roll, alternate sound bites, things that you're thinking of still maybe putting in another version, but you don't want yet, but you want them handy. That's where managing this work area can really come in handy for you. All right, so now we're going to export our video. So the main thing is you want to make sure you do something that's going to properly align with the settings in your sequence. If you don't get your frame rates or your resolution right, it can result in a lower quality video, and it can result in a lot of weird errors. It can result in frames that look jumpy, a host of issues that you don't want to have that can very easily be solved by just making sure everything's in setting, like settings are synced. So basically, if you're at the point where you're not comfortable with all this means, you can very easily just hit this button. It will be a lifesaver called match source. Click it and see how it grays everything out. Premiere is saying, okay, I'll take it. I'll make sure everything matches. Now, depending on your level of experience, and this is what's great about Premiere, if you don't have a lot of experience in this, you can say, you know what, Premiere, take the reins, just tell me the best way to do it. If you do, you can dial in specifics based on what you'd like to do. So I'd recommend for very beginning editors, really just hit match source. But if you look at here, our frame size for the video, our frame rate, progressive, no one does interlaced anymore, which is a different way of doing video, but progressive is what everything is now. That's the P you hear in 1080p or 2160p, which is 4K. The aspect ratio, all this stuff is just going to lock in and match to your sequence. So you're going to get the best quality that your sequence can be. Same thing here for the audio. This audio here is essentially AAC, really just refers to what's a newer version of an MP3. It's a smaller audio file, but it also doesn't lose as much quality as an MP3 does. And you can choose also MPEG audio as well. But again, we're not going to get too much into that. This is just basic stuff. Your format or your codec, what a codec is basically the language that you're writing in. So think of it as humans. We have multiple languages, right? We have English, we have Spanish, we have French, we have German. You can be saying something that makes a lot of sense, but if the person doesn't speak that language, they're not going to understand. So video players learn to speak certain languages. So what you have to do is tell it, what language do I want to write this video in so that certain video players, depending on where I'm putting it, can understand and decode that. So they're decoding it. Right now, what we're doing is encoding it. So that's why it's a codec. So there's a bunch here. Some of these, like a PNG would just be like basically a still file if you wanted to do a frame. Target, TIFF, these are things you'll see in Photoshop. MPEG, I think a lot of people are familiar with. The internet's very MPEG heavy. You want to do a DVD, a Blu-ray. But the couple of main codecs you're ever going to look at, H.264 is going to be suitable for a lot of uses. It's very high quality, but it also doesn't make a big file. It's really what you want to use for internet and things like that. ProRes which is Apple QuickTime. That's going to be for professional use. These are things that are going to broadcast. They're going to air in big venues, things that are professionally used, large scale projects. You always want to have a professional codec, and QuickTime is really actually the industry standard codec at this moment. Now this OP1A, what that is again, for broadcast purposes, this puts what's called metadata into the file. So if you need to have something like closed captionings, or if you just need metadata that is in the file for a master control operator, which is the people at the station that are going to actually manage and play back the station's content, there may just need to be information embedded in that file that you may not see, but someone who's managing that file needs to see. That's what that would be. You know, as a beginner, you're really not going to have to worry about that. But if you get farther along and if you end up working professionally in editing, you may be asked to encode that. So that's what that purpose is for. And this is ProRes MXF OP1A. So this is the industry standard with that metadata. So this is what a lot of TV stations will do just for their internal operations. So generally, I would say, unless you're, you know, this is a commercial that's going to air, stick with H.264. So that's what we have here. And then there's going to be some presets in here. Now, a couple of these are presets I have for projects that I manage and clients that I have, but these are basically the standard ones. And generally you want to do your high quality 1080 just so you're not losing anything. Now, this is very important too. Our video is in 1080p. You don't want to make a codec that's a higher quality than what your video is, because what that's going to do, it's going to basically for lack of a better term, overstretch it, but it's going to try to fit less quality into a bigger box, and that's not going to work out. It's just not going to look right. So that's why it's so important to make sure you match it. Now, you can squeeze it down to a lower. So 480p is what we would have considered standard definition, but that's been over 20 years. So we really can't call it standard anymore. But TV, before we went to HD, that's what it was 480. You can squeeze it down. Like, say something's going to play only on the internet, like a website in a little corner of a website, or only on a phone or a small screen, or just something where you don't have the bandwidth. Maybe you're live streaming, you can't have really big files, so you need something smaller. When you squeeze something down, you're going to preserve that quality, and it's going to be the sharpest something can look at that lower quality, because you actually have more information that you're squeezing down. So if you think of, like, if you looking at a picture in your files and you keep zooming in and keep zooming in, it's going to get lower quality because there's less information there. But if you have a picture that has a ton of pixels and you squeeze it down, it's going to look really sharp because you have all that information filling those pixels. So you want to at least match or down res. You never want to try to up res something, because it's just not going to look right. So again, Apple ProRes, that's going to be industry standard delivery format. So this is not a commercial that we're actually airing. This is something for YouTube. So high quality 1080p is fine. So our video is named according to the title of our timeline. We can just literally manually change that. We don't need to, but this is how you would do it. Where it's going to be saved is very important, because after you export it, you need to be able to find it. So you can click here, and it's just going to bring this up. And what's great about Premiere is, if from a timeline, if you export things, it's going to start to remember where you like to put them, which is very great. You don't have to spend forever looking around. And this is our finished lesson videos, which are the folder that we keep these videos in when we're done. So it's going to go right here. And then you would hit save. So you save that location. The last thing you're going to do, you're either going to hit export, click export, or you can send it to the media encoder. So essentially, if you click the export button, it's just going to bring up that little window in the middle of the screen, just the way it does when you render. It's going to show you a progress bar, and when it's done, it'll be in that file location. If you hit send to media encoder, and I'll show you why we would do that. It's going to take a moment. The media encoder is going to open. Now, media encoder always comes with Premiere. And even if you don't get the full suite and all the other apps, it's going to be bundled with Premiere, because this is a powerful and efficient way for you to export your videos. And what the media encoder will do, so I have that up. There's two screens here. You can't see the other side to bring this over. What this media encoder will do, so now you kind of have a queue of videos. So you could have 5 videos you need to export. Instead of doing them one at a time and then waiting and doing them one at a time, you can keep repeating the process of everything we did, hit send to media encoder, and then it's going to keep populating this list. And then once that list is populated, you just hit play, and it's going to just export everything. So it's going to do one after another after another. It's called batching. So you can do that and you can walk away, do something, walk the dog, go to the grocery store, and you don't have to sit there and wait for every video to export to start another one. The other advantage is while you're exporting in Media Encoder, you can still be working in Premiere if your system is powerful enough. So with the standard way of exporting from Premiere, once you do that, that locks up Premiere and you can't do anything else. But if you're going to be exporting from the Media Encoder, you can just use Premiere and still edit videos or look at things or trim clips or do whatever you have to do. As an editor, efficiency is king. So you never want to just be sitting and be like, well, I'm exporting a video. I guess I can't work for the next hour, or depending on how long it's going to take. You want to move something forward at all times. And as you get more experience and work with clients, it's going to be very important to manage your time. So that's why this is so powerful. And, you know, again, there's a lot more to exporting. There's a lot more Media Encoder can do. So we'll probably do a video series, honestly, in the future on all the different codecs and ways you can use Media Encoder, because you can use Media Encoder by itself to transcode files and do all kind of cool things. But this is going to give us an overview. We're doing the H.264. We're doing the high quality 1080p and the location. These are the things we decided. And this is just kind of verifying for us. And guess what? If you get to this stage and say, you know what, I picked the wrong one of anything, you can click it, drag that over, and look at that. It brings this window up where you can start to adjust this stuff again. And the location as well. You can make sure you're putting in the right folder. So very powerful tool. Once you have done this, you hit play. Your video is going to export. So you're going to see this bar progressing. You're going to see how much time has elapsed. You can kind of look at your settings to make sure everything looks right. And you can get the estimated time remaining. And this is going to fluctuate. Usually it goes down for a while and then it gets a little closer and it starts to level off to be real time. But we're only exporting about a minute commercial. That's not a huge file, so that's going to go pretty quickly. If you're exporting a half an hour video or an hour, it's going to take longer. So that's something you want to budget into your time as an editor, is how long is this going to take me to export? So if I have to turn in a cut by 5 and I have an hour-long video, I'm going to want to be exporting by about 3. Because if I don't give myself that time, I'm not going to make my deadline. So this is part of your editing process. You have to budget that in. So we're going pretty quick here. We're almost done. And I'll just let this finish just so you can see what this looks like. And also this little window preview here, this is important too, because every now and then you might have a rogue frame. You might have a mistake that you didn't notice. You might have a glitch. There could be some error. There's a million things that can go wrong with an export. So keep your eye on that window, because what they're showing you is, hey, this is your last chance to kind of make sure everything is looking good here. No, there's no audio, but if you see some weird frame or frame of black or something you know that shouldn't be there, you can stop your export and go back and fix it and start it over again. And if you ever want to stop your export, stop. Or if you want to just pause it, say you need to free up your machine for a moment, you can pause it to free back up that hardware and bandwidth, that RAM usage, and then you can resume it. So we're just about done here. And sometimes at the end, it'll lag again because it's just kind of wrapping up and finalizing this video. There's a lot of background metadata writing and file writing that it's doing that you don't see. So that's what some of this time takes. But once this is done encoding, see a green check mark and you'll know the video is ready to view. There you go. You have now exported your first video in Premiere. Congratulations, you've completed our beginner video editing series. You now have the basic skills you need to become a professional video editor. In the next series, we'll take you beyond the basics. I'll show you some more advanced video editing skills like how to adjust color, how to sync audio and video together. We'll talk about mixing down the audio for your videos, editing B-roll over interviews, general pacing, and more. I mean, you know, the Beyond the Basics series will give you everything that you need to know to tell a more compelling story with video. For more Premiere Pro tutorials, click the like button, click the subscribe button, and make sure to ring the notification bell. And as soon as the next volume is uploaded, you'll find the link in the description.